Hello everyone, this is Tribecast and my name is Marina. Last week I have got an unpleasant cold, so I don't feel like talking much today. Let me just tell you that you are listening to Kotka episode of Tribecast Summer Tour. The episode was recorded during Ship Startup Festival 2019, and our guests of this week are startup entrepreneurs Retu, Hamara and Ronja Hellström, ship mentors Rhett Thompson and Neveli Niit, and the ship captain himself, Antti Viitanen. And before I start coughing again, let's continue to the interviews. And Tribecast team has settled up and plugged up at Ship Startup Festival in Kotka. And now we have our first guest for this episode. Hello, and please tell our listeners a few things about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Ronja Hellström and I'm from Turku and I'm currently studying animation and working on a startup project.
Yeah, I'm Retu Hamara. I also come from Turku. I'm educated as a designer and I've been doing some game design related stuff for a couple of years now.
For our listeners, I'd like to remind that we have already recorded Turku episode. By the way, it's the most listened to episode in the entire Tribecast history. Let's check if Kotka can beat the record. And now, could you guys tell us a bit more about your startup?
Our startup revolves around a tabletop role-playing game, and we're aiming to make a role-playing game that's easy to play and easy to learn, and you can finish it in one evening. And we've been working on it since January this year, approximately.
Yeah, but the project has been going on longer.
Yeah, it started as a school project a bit before that, before the year change. But yeah, it was a bit of a slow start.
Yeah, I actually came to buy this project I saw a message in Facebook asking, hey, is anyone interested in doing this kind of role-playing game thing? And I was, okay, I have time, I can do it, or something. Yeah. Then we just met up in some bar in Turku, and it started from there.
A bar in Turku?
Yeah, that's where the magic happens.
Yes.
And when we talk about startup festivals, I just have to invite you to Tampere to Stream Startup Festival in October. The tickets are already on sale, so hope to see you there. Actually, we have a small and a just established game hub in Tampere, so I haven't had much chance to talk to gaming startups on the record. Why have you decided to step into this specific field instead of doing whatever else?
Games. Why games? I just love games. They have been my passion for my whole life, basically.
Yeah, me too. Especially board games that are easy to play are my niche thing. And the thing is that the board game industry is actually growing quite fast at the moment, so
it's a good time to get started on those.
Yeah.
We usually say that Finnish startups should be aimed at going abroad, so don't you see a problem with the games? I mean, you have to both translate them and culturally adjust them before stepping into a new market, right?
Yeah, the localization is always part of going abroad with the games, but we are making the game to mostly American audiences, basically, because
and European.
Yeah, European. I mean, the Western culture thing. So when we get to that part to localize for Asia or wherever, so that will be quite some time.
Yeah,
but I don't see it as a problem because I feel that the Western games can do quite well also in the Asian market.
Yeah, and about the translations, we are pretty good at working in English, so we don't have to actually translate the game to English. We're working in English from beginning. Yeah,
I actually forget about it. The language of game industry is English, even in Finnish, so basically everything goes in English. Yeah.
Okay, do you have a Finnish-only team now?
At the moment,
currently,
yes.
Finns and Finns weed also. And but basically Finns.
And probably last question. You told me that this is not your first ship, right? So could you tell our listeners what do you think about the event this year? And before you start talking, I'd like to underline that Tribecast is an independent media, so you are more than welcome to share your actual thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, so this is not a sponsored message here. Yeah. Today, this feels kind of same as last year. This is my third time here, so I've been now 3 times in a row. It's been transforming to a bit more formal, but, the first time 2 years ago, the event was held at the same time with the Kotka Meripäivät, a huge maritime festival here, so there was a whole lot more people, and the ship event was held in those huge industrial size like buildings nearby. So the feeling was a bit like startup-y ghetto styles. And now that we're here in Vellamo, this place, I mean, it feels amazing. It looks amazing. I think this is a great place to hold this. And last, I was here as an alum by a Boost startup journey, which was the first time I was here. And I was asked to hold a pitch because someone like cancelled, so they needed to fill a place on the pitches. So I just came up with some game idea that I pitched here on the stage last year. And now that I'm ready to pitch again if something happens, but now I can focus more on the actual classes and the clinics. And we had some good master classes, like the last one you were on.
Yeah, that was really good. It was Neveli Niit's, like about customers and products and how to relate those two things.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We're continuing with Tribecast Summer Tour. We're now in Kotka. Tribecast Tre going around Finland and talking to startup ecosystems outside of Tampere. We have one more guest who decided to dedicate a few minutes of his time to our podcast. Thank you very much, Rhett, for having time for this interview, and thank you for having time for it immediately after you ended your mentoring session. Please tell our listeners a few things about yourself before we start any further.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Rhett Thompson. I'm from the United States, but I live in Helsinki, and I'm an investor and an entrepreneur.
You just finished a mentoring session during Kotka Ship Festival. Could you please summarize in a few words what was your session about?
Yeah, so I was asked to give a presentation masterclass on international growth, and that's something I've been spending many years working on myself and have been fortunate to achieve success there. So I told several stories around, what I've been doing and some techniques on how we did that.
Okay. And also you are mentoring startups during this clinic format. Can you generally explain, because we didn't yet have any mentors from there, can you explain for our listeners who haven't been to SHIP but probably will visit the event next year, what the format is about? How do these clinics work?
Yeah. Well, so the goal is to learn and have startups be able to share their experience, their challenges, their aspirations with people who have done similar things. And so I've met with a variety of different startups during SHIP, and it's really about where are they in the process and what I see that they could do next that possibly they either haven't focused on or haven't even thought about it. So it's about sharing ideas and experiences for better outcomes.
Okay. You met like all the startups which participate in this competition during SHIP Festival. What are your general experience? I guess you have been already visiting quite many startup events. What's specific? Maybe there is like more startups within specific field, or maybe there are more really early stage startups this year, or I don't know.
I think it's rather common that the companies struggle with articulating the problem they're trying to solve and how would they actually achieve the solution, because I guess I put myself into sort of the mind of the purchaser, the mind of the buyer of that product or service. And if I don't understand that it's a solution for a challenge I have almost instantly, because we're all inundated with information these days, so you have to be really crisp and clear and quick, and most of the startups struggle with that particular issue. They struggle with, in a simple way, explaining, why should you listen and why should you spend your money on that product or service as a buyer. So
basically they have like a pitching problem.
Yes, they do.
Interesting, because it seems that there are so many like manuals and mentors and courses nowadays for like all kind of pitching and presentations.
There are also many, many startups as well. They're always coming and unfortunately going. So it feels like that. And then maybe as well, when we all need to be in a constant state of learning. So even though you might have attended a pitch workshop or you've been given certain feedback, unless that is something that you're constantly trying to pay attention to and get better at, I just feel that you sort of lose it. You sort of lose focus on something that is outrageously important to your success.
Interesting. I assume that you have also visited a few events recently. Can you please share what was your schedule like recently, like a few other events and festivals, or maybe something you will visit soon and you feel like talking about?
That is a great question. I just returned from the United States 2 days ago, but prior to that, I was in Norway for an outstanding startup event there. Then a couple of days later in Lithuania, many different events, partly because of the time of year, but also because there are ideas that are germinating and spawning in all over the Nordics. That's why I love the Nordics. The Nordics has a tremendous amount of intellectual capacity and innovation, but I think I see they maybe lack confidence to take those ideas broader into international markets.
So you mean they stick in the Nordics?
They stick in the Nordics, or maybe they don't. They don't raise the flag and share their stories, and they could, but maybe they just need a little push.
Right. Yeah, we're recording in this open space where simultaneously some pitching event
really
is going
cool
and
space,
stuff.
By the way.
Yeah. I like this space, and I like how it feels like real spirit here. And right, I just wanted to ask you, let's pretend that I'm an early stage startup and I want to go to my first startup festival to pitch my ideas, meet some investors, potential partners, whatever. How do you choose an event where to go? Besides obviously requirements, like if there is some field specific or stuff, what to look at when you check the event?
I believe it would start, of course, with knowing your own product. Let's say if it's a physical product that maybe is something like a sensor, something like that, then there are more hardware-focused events that focus on what you could learn that's very important for going broad market with some kind of a physical device, then opposed to like what I typically do, which is business-to-business software. So B2B SaaS, it's far easier to scale internationally than anything else. And I personally focus on events that are linked towards that because it's a common mind. So it's the same thing. It's like, if you depending on what your product or service is, then from that you can find, because there are so many different festivals, you find specialization because the festivals themselves or the startup events themselves are also trying to be as unique and interesting as possible. So it's a great opportunity for fit. There's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. It's amazing where we are right now to be an entrepreneur. And as an investor, I'm looking for great companies, and it's a great time to be it's a bit noisy. There are a lot of things that I have to pay attention to, but it's wonderful that we are where we can grow now.
Okay, so Rhett Thompson thinks that it's a good time to start a business of your own nowadays in Nordics.
Certainly do.
Since you mentioned it, as an investor, when you're looking at a startup or a company, what are your criteria? I know it might be a bit personal and business specific, but maybe there are still something you would like to share.
Well, I like founders that actually come with unique knowledge of their space. That's essential for me, that someone needs to really have an understanding of the problem because maybe they've lived that problem. Maybe they worked in an environment that did not have a solution, but they could. It's one of the things. Well, if we only had this, it would work so much better. They were thinking that kind of thing, and those people tend to be the inventors.
Do you have a no-no? Like a startup comes to you, and you're okay. You're maybe interesting guys, but I won't work with you. I want to invest in you. That is like a no. There's my point.
Yeah, I think you're probably asking for my number one. Because there are lots of those things that I won't do. And I have a process where I ask questions to get to know the founders and get to know their understanding of the problem that they're trying to solve. And there's no real formula for understanding who would be successful. So if I think that they lack expertise in the space, no way. Because the competitors, especially if they're generating revenue, they know what they're doing to some degree.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. And that's an easy one for me. Or, but I also have to be able to, they have to sell me on the success of the company. And if they can't do that, if they can't actually explain why they're doing what they're doing, then no.
Interesting. May I have one last question if you still have a minute? I guess, again, you said that there are no easy explanation, but still, what's the key to success for an early stage startup?
Yeah, that is a great question. I mean, I think we could go with basics like, tenacity and...
Nobody ever said the word tenacity on this podcast ever since, so it's not basics for us. Please continue.
Or sisu, it's the same thing. So, yeah, the level of... I think if people actually knew just how hard it was, fewer people would do it. Because it's so incredibly difficult to be successful as an entrepreneur. And So that grit, that really deep core kind of, when you have entrepreneurs, we're visionaries, and we can sense outcomes. Are we always correct? Absolutely not. But if you don't have at least that, then you won't be able to be successful.
I just like how you put it, especially the idea that you have to be very understanding of not being always correct, because some people seem to be not